Hey guys, it's Andrew from Lou Projects again, and if you've gotten this far, you're probably interested in what the actual staging process looks like under our LEM, so the stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3 pricing process. Now I know a lot of people are really confused about this because a lot of people want to get into the nitty gritty, but they're at actually different stages. So you need to focus on one stage at a time. It's easier for us, it's easier for you to comprehend. It's also easier for the architect or building designer. So I'm actually going to show you real life examples. And in this instance, we're going to use Zahara House, which is our own development from a couple of years ago. We still own this property, and I went through the whole concept design, preliminary estimate, the whole shebang, all the way to DA, construction certificate, all that kind of stuff. Just to be clear, we only need a few documents at this stage, and I'll go through what those documents are. We basically just need a set of floor plans, elevations, which is a view from the front or the side of the house so we can see how many windows and doors there are. And then we also need to understand if you're interested in passive house, so we need to understand, factoring those into the pricing. We also need to get a general scope of work, so a list of all the things that you expect out of your project. So particularly if it's a renovation or extension, we need to know if we're including landscaping or if we're including refurbishing all the windows and doors, insulating all the internal walls. So those are things that we need to focus on at this stage. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, like I said, we need, number one, a floor plan at the bare minimum. This is what a floor plan looks like. You can see how big the footprint is, which is the biggest point. It's about the size of the house. That impacts the budget a lot. We know there's a kitchen, we know there's a bathroom, 3 bedrooms, living room, obviously, and then upstairs there is also a bedroom and an ensuite. So when we do our takeoff, we can quantify all these spaces. Now, a lot of people get confused about this stage because they want to start getting in the nitty gritty of all the joinery and all these little finer details. We're not actually there at that point. We're trying to focus on understanding how big the house is and how to make allowances for these different areas. The other thing we need is elevations. So we need to understand where the windows are, how many windows are there, what the materials are roughly going to be. We don't need to know exactly what the materials are at this stage. Again, getting too detailed. We just need to make allowances for these different types of materials. For instance, the expectation is COLORBOND on the roof, recycled brick on the areas that's shown as brick, and FC cladding on the other areas. So that's easy for us to quantify. The specifics of actual materials can be figured out later. The discrepancy in pricing isn't huge, but it just means that we can get on with a preliminary estimate to give you guys a clear understanding of what the budget is or what the price is for that concept design at this stage. Now, the other thing is, I mentioned the scope of works. Now, we've got this little template here that we get our clients to fill out. Obviously, some of these are big, like there's gonna be a lot more in this, but this is just an example. For instance, on the exterior work, replace existing windows and double glazed units. Obviously, a set of plans that get given to us, but we don't know what we're actually doing unless it's really clearly labeled on the plans. Replace every single window and door, insulate every single external wall. These are little bits and pieces we need as the client and the architect to put together a scope of work so we understand what sort of scope and what costings we're trying to capture at this stage. That's another really important point. The other thing was passive house. So if you're interested in passive house, then we need to understand if you want the HRV, you want the Intello wraps, you want the whole shebang with that kind of stuff. If you're not interested in that, then fine. We just need to know whether you're interested at this stage or not. Okay, now that we've got all that information, we can now start our takeoff. We can measure every length of wall, how much timber there is, how much flooring there is, how many windows there are. And at this stage, again, we don't have a full detail of some of these areas, right? We don't know what the design of the robe is. We don't know if it's made out of black butt or if it's Polytech. The same thing with the kitchen. We don't know the elevations, or we don't have the elevations, so we don't know what the materials are. So at this stage, it's about understanding your expectation of what kind of level of finishes you want in the kitchen, and I'll be able to tell you whether that's an achievable amount or achievable scope within your budget. And then at this stage, we'll just make assumptions. So we'll allow for provisional sums for the kitchen, say 40 grand for the kitchen, wardrobes 5 grand, and we'll go through and quantify all that. And we'll make assumptions about the ensuite, the bathroom, whether it's tiling, whether it's render, all sorts of things. This is about capturing as much information as we can making assumptions and then presenting the client with a preliminary estimate based on what I would call almost a concept design. And that's when we start figuring out whether we wind or scale up on the next developed design, or we scale down in terms of trying to get it to an achievable budget. Now, the key point I want to make at this stage is that making changes now before submitting to DA or going on a full CDC process is that there's opportunity for you to scale up and scale down without it being fully documented or submitted to council. This is the time to make the changes. To shrink a project now or scale up on a project now is heaps easier to do rather than resubmitting to council. The other thing to really focus on is not all the nitty-gritty stuff. Let's focus on getting the preliminary estimate right, the concept right, and then figuring out whether we take it to DA and take it to the next stage. All right, now we're going to get into stage 2. This is actually the more exciting stuff. This is what people like to get into. They want to get into the nitty gritty. They want to know what their kitchen's going to look like, what the materials are going to be, how some of the interesting and more exciting architectural details are sort of going to be coming to life. So at this stage, we want a bit more of a detailed set of floor plans with more dimensions and all that kind of stuff, more accuracy in the layout. So with this project, for instance, we got the interior designer to be involved. So I don't know if anyone can remember, like the kitchen was actually completely different, but the interior designer came through and said, I think this would be a better layout, be more efficient with the space. So that was done first. And what we did was price it off these interiors. So there was a coordination between the architecturals and the interiors, and that's been placed into the architectural plans. But at this stage, we were actually just pricing off the interiors package. So here's like a great example of how like a design can impact the budget just in one area. For instance, now we know what that splashback's going to be. It's stone, BT1, I'll refer to that in a minute. JF2, what kind of finish that is, and you know, how big the bench tops are, how long is it? Oh, okay, now there's a butler's pantry in there and we're adding a sink. Like these are the bits of information we sort of really need to know at this stage. That way we can send it out to contractors and they can actually price it accurately rather than just making assumptions about how much a kitchen will cost. So if I refer to those like finishes, BT1 and JF2 and JF1, we go down to the finishes schedule. You got the BT1 is Caesar Stone, turbine grey, JF1 is Polytech thermo-laminated, JF2 is Polytech melamine. So when we send this out to our contractors, they just refer to this schedule and they understand what it all looks like. So if I go back to the elevations, they can quantify how many JF2s there are, how much stone there is, how many drawers there are, because each drawer is another mechanism, it's another cost, it's not cheap. So it's about understanding what the expectation is in the design. So this is a great example of how important it is to have an interiors package presented to us so we can get more accuracy throughout the entire project. And the same with the bathrooms. WF1, going back to that schedule, I know what it is, it's a Venetian render. We need to know what the finish on the wall is going to be. If the expectation that it's going to be a Venetian render, then that's 450 or 400 bucks a square meter versus 150 or 200 bucks a square meter in tiling. And we also need to know what the joinery finish or what the design is for the vanity. That can be either a built-in vanity or off-the-shelf vanity, we don't know. So we need to figure out what the design is so we can send that out to our contractors and get it all priced up. And again, getting more accuracy. We also know where the wall lights are, how many mirrors, or if there's a mirror there, what the wall finish is again on that wall, and that again, that's Venetian render. Sometimes we need to know what the specific bath is, where the tap fittings are. All of this stuff is sort of considered early on, and it's great for us so we can get more accuracy and an understanding of how to price the job. Rather than those provisional sum allowances, then now we know the kitchen is 45 grand, not a guess of 35. So that's a great example of what we need at that stage. Another piece of information we need is an RCP, or a reflected ceiling plan. Some people call it electrical plans. This piece of information gives us how the electrical is going to be done. There can be quite a significant variance with electrical based on the needs and wants of clients. For instance, we need to know how many lights there are, if there's going to be wall lights, how many pendants there are. You can imagine a downlight is only $20 versus a wall light might be $400. There's a big difference, and if you quantify that and say there's 14 wall lights, it's going to be a very big difference between 14 wall lights and 14 downlights. So for instance here, Copper Electrical did the design. They allowed for downlights, they're pretty sensible there. Allowed for a fan here. There was some, they've allowed for the power points here. There's some wall lights on the outside through here. So all of that is set out in this legend over here. And speaking of legends, this is the actual spec of each of those fittings. So if you can imagine, some of these brass fittings might be $400, some of these smaller fittings might be $250, but if I expected that to be copper, it might be a little bit more. If I expected it to be just standard powder coated metal, it might be a bit less. So this is about establishing the level of finishes, and that can give such a massive change in the pricing for electrical. You can go from 40 grand to 100 grand if you're not sensible about the design and what the expectation is from stage one. So we need an electrical plan. Another really important set of documents is the engineering. For instance, again, this is the floor layout of the house. We don't actually know how it's going to be built. We can make assumptions from stage one, but we don't know how it's going to be built until the engineer gets involved. For instance, you can see here, P1 is actually screw piles, and along here is a type of strip footing and then brickwork on top of that. Again, we don't actually know, we're not engineers, so we don't actually know how that strip footing is going to be built. We don't know how many piers we need to put in, the screw piles. So that's where we start going through the engineering drawings to figure that out. And then that gets sent to contractors, for instance, for a concrete slab, that might get sent to the concreters. They price it up, and that's a fixed price on the concrete. And they know how this is designed. For instance, obviously the size is there. Now we can see where the edge beams are, where the internal beams are, and then the section drawings are drawn in of how that looks. Now it's really important for this point here that there's actually a step down there, and to build that step down is actually a significant amount of work. So that's something we really need to know. So a section drawing is really important, and it gives us a detail of how wide these footings are and where the screw piles are. You can see here what the specification, how much steel is involved, how the screw pile gets tied into the trench. Yeah, so engineering is really important for us, and we can get a lot more accuracy at this stage, so don't skip that part. The next set of documents we need is a window schedule. Now, a lot of people don't really know this, but it usually takes up around 10% of your budget for windows and doors, so it's really important to try and get as much accuracy as possible, particularly the variance between, say, hardwood double glazed windows versus aluminium standard double glazed windows or thermally broken windows. There's significant variance between those prices. So it's about understanding how many windows there are, what the layout is, because a fixed window is going to be a lot more expensive. A fixed window is going to be a lot cheaper than a window that's operable because there's mechanisms involved. So we need to quantify how many windows there are and send that all over to our contractors, and they can price it up. And sometimes you might have to chase it up with a few suppliers to figure out who's the best supplier and who's priced it the best. So that's one process. The next thing, and it's not, this isn't absolutely essential, but we would ideally like a landscape plan, particularly if you're really big on making sure that the landscaping is done. You might as well get that designed now. We can scale back and change a few things. This is an example of our house. Mark Hill, who did the design, he's laid out, what kind of pathways, what kind of finishes are going to be around the house. There's an existing pool, there's a new courtyard thing there. These are the specifications of each of those plants and each of those finishes. So it's really helpful. We can send that to, again, our landscapers, and they can price it up and get a lot more accuracy within that landscaping. There's obviously probably a few things that I've missed. I haven't captured every single thing, but at least you can get a broad understanding of the important documents that we need for stage 2. And that way you can sort of focus on one stage and what you need for that, and then focus on the next stage and what you need for that. And that way you don't get overwhelmed with having to make decisions about anything, because sometimes you don't need to make decisions about certain things at different stages. So I hope that clears that stage up a little bit more. And the next stage is stage 3, but it's going to be really quick. It's about refining the price. Okay, you've made it to stage 3. This part is not a large stage. It's just about refining the price. So after stage 2, you've got most of your documentation sorted out. At this stage, we're trying to figure out, all right, where did the budget end up landing? We made assumptions, whether our assumptions are spot on or the scope increased at stage 2 or the design increased or whatever it is, and it's actually made the totality of the price a lot more or a little bit more. What do we need to do? Is there room to move on the budget, or are you happy to scale things back? And that's sort of where we start refining some of the materials without having to fully change the design. And we shouldn't be that far off the mark to have to do a redesign. So say if for instance, we've made an assumption because the flooring that was specified ended up being too expensive, we made an assumption that the flooring allowance should be 140 as opposed to 240 a square metre. At that stage, it's about making sure that what we've captured in our pricing is reflected into the plans. So then we move into construction, we're not submitting variations, we're actually just making the coordination between the proposal and what's actually designed as a document that we can actually build off. Now, each of these stages for us alone takes maybe 3 or 4 weeks in terms of pricing. So if you can imagine design, pricing stage, full design, pricing stage, you can add up all those months. You could be 9 months in and we could be at stage 2 by then. And that's when we're starting to talk about when we're gonna actually start on site, when we're gonna sign contracts and get the deposits paid and all that kind of stuff. So stage 3 should be it should be a short, brief refining stage, and we can actually just get into the construction shortly after. All right guys, I hope that clears things up in terms of all of this total pre-construction process. And the biggest question we get asked though is, how do we know that we're gonna get the best price? Now, the thing is, I'm not gonna guarantee that you're gonna get the cheapest price, but I know we are gonna give you the most value for your budget. We're not out there to try and rip you off. We also understand that we're probably a little bit more accurate in the market value. So say if builders quote jobs, they're not capturing all the little discussions that we had throughout the whole process. And eventually that translates into a variation during construction. So that will give you the true value of the project, but it'll be later down the track. So it's really important that you understand that. Again, we're super transparent with our pricing, so you can see that we're not actually putting giant markups on things. I hope you can understand that this is a really rigorous and clear procedure, and we're there to take care of you, and we're there to actually turn your project into reality.